Saruman turning evil was one of the biggest shocks to the other characters of Middle-earth. From the most respected of his order and a close friend of Gandalf, Saruman became the biggest enemy of our story after Sauron. This week on Ink and Fantasy, let's discover how, why, and when Saruman abandoned reason for madness. Saruman's story begins as Kurumo, a Maya spirit that served the Vala Aule the Smith, the creator of the dwarven race and master of Sauron before he turned to evil. Kurumo was very powerful, and he was one of the 5 guardians to be sent to Middle-earth to protect the elves when they first awoke, thousands of years before the Lord of the Rings. In his time as one of the guardians, he was known as Tarindor, and he served the Valar and the side of good alongside Olorin, who was Gandalf, Ravandil, who was Radagast, in addition to Palasendo and Hymenar, the Blue Wizards. Following the eventual defeat of the Dark Lord Morgoth, the powers in the west grew concerned about the potential threat of Morgoth's lieutenant Sauron. As such, the Valar summoned a council, and it was determined that members of the Lesser Ainur, the Maiar, should be sent again to Middle-earth as emissaries to guide the Free Peoples throughout this ordeal. Kurumo participated in this council, and he immediately jumped at the opportunity of joining this band of emissaries that would become known as the Wizards, or the Istari. He volunteered first to be sent to Middle-earth and was made the leader of the order. From the very beginning of this expedition, however, cracks in Kurumo's mental state had begun to show. While noble in spirit, one of his flaws was pride. He was forced to take Radagast with him to please the Lady Yavanna, and from that day on, he held the Brown Wizard in contempt. As for Gandalf, the Grey Wizard did not intend to join at all, or take any high position in the Order. He was commanded to do so by Manwë himself, the King of the Valar, and arrived in Middle-earth third. Manwë's wife, Lady Varda, however, made abundantly clear that Gandalf was not the third in importance, and he had her backing. Nonetheless, the rules that the Valar placed upon the wizards for their conduct in Middle-earth were described as such. Emissaries they were from lords of the West, the Valar, who still took counsel for the governance of Middle-earth, and when the shadow of Sauron began first to stir again, took this means of resisting him. For with the consent of Eru, they sent members of their own high order, but clad in bodies, as of men, real and not feigned, but subject to the fears and pains and weariness of earth, able to hunger and thirst and be slain, though because of their noble spirits they did not die, and aged only by the cares and labors of many long years. And this the Valar did, desiring to amend the errors of old, especially that they had attempted to guard and seclude the Eldar by their own might and glory fully revealed, whereas now their emissaries were forbidden to reveal themselves in forms of majesty, or to seek to rule the wills of men and elves by open display of power, but coming in shapes weak and humble, were bidden to advise and persuade men and elves to good, and to seek to unite in love and understanding all those whom Sauron, should he come again, would endeavor to dominate and corrupt. I am sure you can begin to see the irony of what ultimately transpired. As the wizards arrived to Middle-earth, they picked up different names given to them by the locals. Kurumo was Saruman in Westron, the language of the men of the West. Soon enough, more cracks began to appear. Círdan the shipwright was in possession of a great ring forged by Celebrimbor, and he witnessed the arrival of the wizards in the Grey Havens. Although he was not the leader, he gave his ring to Gandalf and not Saruman, thus adding yet more darkness to Saruman's thoughts. Regardless, for 2,000 years Saruman stayed true to the cause. He traveled east alongside the Blue Wizards, where he stayed for over a millennium, before ultimately returning to the west as whispers of Sauron spread. In 2463, the White Council was formed. Despite Galadriel's wishes that Gandalf should be made its leader, Saruman was appointed to the position. For the next few centuries, he deepened his connection with the race of men, and was granted by the Steward of Gondor the key of the Númenórean fortress of Orthanc, under the understanding that the White Wizard would protect the western flank of Rohan. And protect he did. He found, however, something within the tower. One of the 7 seeing stones, the Palantir of Orthanc, originally forged by the elves and brought to Middle-earth by Elendil. To Saruman's detriment, that stone would be his undoing. While there was always something off, something arrogant and prideful lurking beneath the surface, Saruman was not genuinely evil for the vast majority of his existence. Whether his willingness to do good came from within or from a sense of duty to satisfy the Valar, we cannot be certain. Saruman the White fell from his high errand, and becoming proud and impatient and enamored of power sought to have his own will by force and to oust Sauron, but he was ensnared by that dark spirit, mightier than he. In his attempt to defeat the evil of Sauron, he was corrupted by it. Like many tyrants before him, he began to think that the ends justify the means, and that only he truly knew what would be best for the world. To Saruman, this involved fortifying Isengard, growing his own army, claiming the One Ring for himself, and eventually overthrowing Sauron entirely. He spent so many centuries studying Sauron's dark lore in order to stop him that his heart started to yearn for the darkness. And this was combined with something else too, that not a lot of people talk about. Deep down, Saruman was afraid, because he had witnessed the power and might of Mordor, and he thought there was no way to defeat the Dark Lord, unless, of course, certain actions were taken. In Letter 181, Tolkien goes into detail about the struggles of Saruman and the Istari. But since, in the view of this tale and mythology, power, when it dominates or seeks to dominate other wills and minds, is evil, these wizards were incarnated in the life forms of Middle-earth, and so suffered the pains both of mind and body. They were also, for the same reason, thus involved in the peril of the incarnate, the possibility of fall, of sin, if you will. The chief form this would take with them would be impatience, leading to the desire to force others to their own good ends, and so inevitably at last to mere desire to make their own wills effective by any means. To this evil, Saruman succumbed. Gandalf did not, but the situation became so much the worse by the fall of Saruman that the good were obliged to greater effort and sacrifice. As all of this bubbled under the surface, Saruman began to sabotage the Free Peoples in secret. He lied about the One Ring being lost, he employed spies against his allies, and started bringing trouble to the Rohirrim. When Sauron declared himself openly toward the end of the Third Age, he contacted Saruman through the Palantir and accelerated his fall. At the peak of his envy of Sauron and hate towards Gandalf, Saruman even forged a magic ring for himself in an attempt to copy the One. In the end, Saruman almost destroyed Rohan, fooled Radagast into helping him capture Gandalf, and declared his allegiance to Sauron before betraying him too. Curiously, in earlier drafts of the story, Tolkien intended to justify Gandalf's absence with Treebeard, who was originally meant to be evil, but I digress. In the end, Saruman was defeated, and his plans came to nothing. Following his evil in the Shire and its destruction, we see an end appropriate to one whose primary sin was that of pride and arrogance. To the dismay of those that stood by, about the body of Saruman, a grey mist gathered, and rising slowly to a great height like smoke from a fire, as a pale shrouded figure it loomed over the hill. For a moment it wavered, looking to the west, but out of the west came a cold wind, and it bent away, and with a sight dissolved into nothing. He had been good for so long only to ruin himself. In the end, he looked towards the beauty of goodness in the west and was cast away like nothing, as all evil is cast away like nothing. Ultimately, Saruman the Wise seems to have lost his way in the last years of the Third Age, a result of external influence and corruption combined with his inner flaws and shortcomings that characterized him for millennia. The wizards being specifically sent to Middle-earth as a fraction of their power and purposely lesser in might, only for their leader to fall into that exact trap makes for a useful lesson. When true power became involved in the form of the One Ring, Saruman was not wise, and he let the darkness take him. If you'd like to support the channel and not miss out on future videos, please consider subscribing. You can also click the link on the right to become a channel member and get early access to all of my content.